Actually, I think I always go down in. All right, everybody, let's grab a seat and get started. Okay. So just for the record, a bunch of people said you like my jacket. It's when I bought it, it was actually a shirt, but I gained too much weight. Now it's a jacket. Okay. How many of you guys did your homework? Raise your hand. Very good. Very good. Okay. All right. So, any of you guys want to share? Okay. You don't have to. You don't have to share it all.
Well, I did mine wrong. So you can- we already decided we've done it wrong.
Wrong? What's wrong about it?
Well, because it could be for anything, and anything that I'm having struggles with, it's the same thing. Like I think about things over and over again until I manifest it, or what's the one? Rationalize and indulge or position myself, manipulate really is what it is.
Well, you have to get more particular about it. You have to get more, because it's different for different things.
Mhm.
So if you're doing it on shopping, it would be different than doing it on relationships or doing it on,
Well, that's how
Yeah.
the first one went.
yeah. So there, you need to be more
That one
particular
didn't seem
about it.
right either.
Okay. Who wants? Anybody want to read their list?
I did mine,
You did yours?
yes,
You want to read it?
yes. Okay.
What
so
are you doing it on?
I'm doing it on a relationship with my daughter,
Okay.
right? So she's 16 and she's insane.
No, this is your inventory,
Oh,
not
sorry.
not hers.
Okay, so in the pursuit of, so I guess for her approval or her, not her affection, but I guess her approval, right? Or the closeness,
Yeah, just
the intimacy, whatever. I might, well, I do, like shop for her, buy her stuff all the time, not enforce consequences. So I lie and I manipulate. So I say I'm gonna punish her and then I don't. So that's lying. Manipulating by buying her things and shopping for her. That's for no reason, because that's manipulating her. That's doing something, expecting something in return. And so, not, just not enforcing consequences, right?
Okay.
So, under the influence of, so when she, and I wrote it from the aspect of when she doesn't give me what I want, or like, when she doesn't conform, when she gets caught for vaping in the bathroom at school. When she messes up, I get pissed, I yell. We sometimes have fist fights and call names, so no respect or boundaries, and angry, I get angry. And I speak poorly of her, like I'll call her brother or her father and say what a little bitch she is or something, you know what I mean? So I speak ugly.
okay. So when you read your list, what do you get from that?
That I'm dishonest and that I,
Well, it's more than dishonest.
and I'm not, it's not working.
What's not working?
The lying and manipulating, I'm not getting what I want. She's gonna mess up regardless. It's not personal.
What is it that you get from when you read that list? What does it tell yourself?
My ego, that I
Okay.
want people to think I have the best daughter. I must have raised her so good, so I'm the best mom. It's about me. I want her to be the best so that I'm the best.
Okay, question. When you read your list, do you see your powerlessness?
Absolutely.
Do you see your unmanageability?
Yes,
Okay. Clearly.
clearly.
Okay. Now that's what we're getting at, right? Because don't forget on page 30, what it says. Second paragraph, we learned we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. And again, this is an exercise that is not in the book, but it takes you to where you want to be. It takes you to see the powerlessness and the unmanageability. So, because in sound mind, you don't want to do those things and act that way and have that kind of a relationship with your daughter, right?
The opposite.
Right. Okay, that's good. Who else wants to, anybody else want to read their list?
Jamie, I didn't actually write mine because I got too, I thought I was overthinking it, but mine goes along, first it sounded like it was supposed to be money, but it's my codependency and spending my money on my children because of my ego.
Okay,
So I don't even know how to write that down.
okay. Well, here's the thing, Ange. We don't work steps in our head. Okay, so you have to write it down. You have to have something tangible in front of you so you can really see the powerlessness and the unmanageability. Okay, so just whatever you're doing that first step on, you just write down all the things that you do and the way you act that you wouldn't if you were in sound mind. And when you do that exercise, there's really no other conclusion you can come to, but God, look how powerless I am. Look how unmanageable my life is. That's the end result of doing that written out exercise to take you to the first step. Okay. Does anybody got any questions on that? That anybody want some clarification on that? Want to talk about that? Now's the time. So everybody's got it figured out, but most of you didn't do the exercise.
So I have like for food, I eat when I'm
Food.
not hungry,
Okay.
and then that's what I do in the pursuit of, right?
Yeah. And let me cut you off for a second. In the pursuit of and under the influence of is not necessary. You could just do one column, but keeping in mind, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for, the reason I say it under the influence of and in the pursuit of is because when you're first doing it, you're doing it on alcohol and drugs, and it's a lot easier to understand that.
Mm.
Okay, because there's some things different that I do in the pursuit of than I do under the influence of. Okay, so when you're doing it on other things, once you get to do this exercise regularly, you just need one list and you know what you're looking for. But go ahead.
So then under the influence, it would be that I eat twice as much as that I anticipated eating, or I feel bad and guilty and self-loathing.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you're doing it on food, it's if you were in sound mind, would you eat 2 meals? No. Okay. So you write that down. If you were in sound mind, would you eat a lot more than you planned on eating? Okay. Really? Because I'm in sound mind. I still eat more than I planned.
It's always over.
But, but if you work the steps on food, then that's certainly, those are the things that you want to list. It's things that you're positive that you would do. Positive that you would do these things that you know that if you were in sound mind, you wouldn't do them.
Like eat the kids' candy.
Eat the kids' candy.
Steal the kids' candy.
Yeah, that's
Steal the kids' candy.
Eat out of the trash can.
So, but trust me when I tell you, if you apply yourself and do this exercise, you're going to find out a lot about yourself. You're going to really understand the powerlessness, and you're really going to understand the unmanageability of whatever you're working the steps on. If you don't do this exercise, then the only way, there's plenty of people in the rooms that have come to fully concede to their innermost self, but they've been sober for years. And if you ask them, they'll tell you it's maybe been 6 years or 10 years or 8 years or 5 years before they really understood that, because it's not good enough to say, yeah, I'm alcoholic. Because again, a newcomer that's first day in the room or second day in the room, They introduce themselves, no, I'm Danny, I'm an alcoholic. You know, so, but that person hasn't fully conceded to them self. So admitting, again, the first step on page 59, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. All you can do, if you don't do any exercise that it's referring to on page 30, then the only thing you can do is agree with that statement on page 59. And agreeing with that statement doesn't get you anywhere because you already knew that before you got here, didn't you? If you didn't know you were powerless and your life was unmanageable, why'd you even go to seek help? So the fact that you sought help, went to a treatment center or went to a detox or went to an AA meeting, is fact that you know you're powerless and your life is unmanageable. I mean, that's proof of it. Again, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, my life is great, I'm going to join AA. Nobody does that. There's no reason to do that. It's only when we have a bunch of consequences that run us into these rooms that we start seeking help. And so the same principle holds true and works for any topic you can think of. And it's the first step that is that we address this. We don't address this in the second step or the third step or any other step. We only address it in step one. And again, you have to do the exercise. You have to do some. I'm not saying this is the only exercise you can do. There might be other ones. I don't know any other ones. I don't recommend any other ones. And I do know that just reading in the book on page 30, that you have to learn to fully concede to your innermost self that you're alcoholic, that this is the first step in recovery, is not good enough. Because you're not fully conceding, you're just reading. Right? And when you get to page 59 and you say, we admitted we're powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable, you're not fully conceding anything. You're just reading, you're agreeing with a sentence that's written in the book. That's all you're doing. That's all you can do. So, but on page 30, they're saying that the first step in recovery is to learn how to fully concede to your innermost self. So if you do that when you first get here, you don't have to wait 10 years to realize the extent of who and what you really are. Okay. So does anybody else got a question on this? Anybody else want to talk about it? Discuss it a little bit? Huh?
I don't want to, but
No, go ahead.
well, I'm wondering, have I not conceded to my innermost self? Because I knew I was an alcoholic when I had heard about a physical allergy. I didn't need to hear that there was an obsession of my mind. I knew I had an obsession.
Okay.
But so to me, I don't know what am I missing because to my innermost self, I knew.
Yeah.
So what am I missing?
Okay. That's a great question, actually. Everybody hear what she just said? Okay. So there are some people that come into the rooms of recovery. And there's some people that come into the room and they get this they even talk about in the book, actually, they wrote the appendix because Bill got this flash thing with God, right? And I've sponsored a couple people over the years that had that. And I know lots of people that come in and saying just what you're saying. And does that mean you're wrong? Absolutely not. Does that mean you're fully conceded to your innermost self? Probably. So I can't answer yes or no to that. But if you think it is, and you are convinced that you're to your innermost self, to the very core of your being, that you're alcoholic, then you're okay. You know, so, but 9 out of 10 people or 90 out of 100 people that come in the room need to do what this telling you on page 30.
So is that what the exercise is designed to do for those people who
Yes.
are on the?
No, well, the exercise is designed for you to, the interesting thing is that if you ask everybody in the rooms, you go to a room, there's 100 people in the room, and ask 100 of them, what is the first step in recovery? mostly all of them are going to say, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. That is not the first step in recovery. That is the first of the 12 steps. The first step in recovery is on page 30. We learned we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we were alcoholic. This is the first step in recovery. That's exactly what it says. Right? So on page 30, they're saying this is the first step in recovery. So if you don't even know that that's the first step in recovery, I'm not sure that you can really fully concede to your innermost self. But what you just said, I believe you. And as long as to your innermost self, to the core of your being, that you believe you're alcoholic, I'd say you're good to go. Now, having just said that, I'd also say it don't hurt to do the exercise anyway.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is what am I missing? Because I'm struggling with the exercise because I don't know how to transfer that.
Well,
because
go back,
I believe I know I.
go back to do it on alcohol. Was that your drug of choice?
Yes.
Or your drug of no choice, actually? Alcohol? So go back and do it on alcohol.
Okay.
And I know I've already said to you guys, if you're 5 years sober, there's no reason for you to work the steps on alcohol and drugs. And that's basically true. But if you're struggling with this exercise, go back and do it on alcohol.
Okay.
And write down everything that you know that you did in the pursuit of alcohol, under the influence of alcohol, that you wouldn't do in sound mind. That'll give you an understanding to take that lesson and apply it to the next topic in your life.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. that makes perfect sense.
Do you need to do it?
Well, I want to understand the.
Yeah. So according to you, you really don't need to do it, but it sure ain't gonna hurt you to do it. And it'll only help you, actually. Does that make sense? Okay. Good point. Okay, anybody else got a question on that? Anybody online got a question on the first step of recovery? There's a funny thing where the sponsor's out to breakfast with his sponsee and the guy's not really committing to the program, you know, and the sponsor is, you know, trying to tell him that there's a difference between committing to the program of recovery and participating in the program of recovery. It's kind of like the action and activity thing, right? So they're talking about it, and the waitress brings the sponsor's breakfast. He's got 2 eggs over easy and sausage and potatoes, and you know, and he's got a big plate there. And he says to the sponsee, "Look at my plate." And the guy looks at the plate. He says, "What do you learn from looking at my plate?" And I don't know. He says, "Well," he says, "you can see that the chicken participated in this, but the pig was committed." So are you committed to this program, or are you just participating? Are you engaged in activity, or are you engaged in action? And we've already talked about the difference of that, what that is, right? Everybody remembers that one? That's a good one.
Question.
Huh?
Can you guys hear me? I have a question, it's Tara.
Yes.
So would it be something like, you know, all the lying, stealing, cheating things that I did when I was drinking, but yet, like, when I was in rehab, I always remember in my head that I didn't need medication. I didn't have any of the shakes. I didn't have those things. So there's always a little question like, well, maybe I'm really not, because I didn't have all these terrible things. Would that be kind of like, I mean, because I've been, you know, dry, I guess, for 3 years, and I still feel like I'm not getting step 1 100%, and I don't know why.
Did you do this exercise?
No.
Oh, that's probably why you're not getting step 100%.
Thank you.
I would. One of the things that we really don't need to put down on this list is lying, because in sound mind, you still lie. You know, to greater and lesser degrees. You know, we buy a lie, we tell a lie, we believe a lie, we live a lie. So, you know, if you want to be more specific about your lying on your list, that's okay. But just to write lying is don't waste your time with that, because it's not really true. Because everything on your list are things that you're 100% sure that you do under the influence or in the pursuit of that you would not do if you were in sound mind. It's a great exercise, you know. Again, if you're sitting in here in this thing and you intend to sit here for the full 30 weeks of what we're doing here, I don't know why you would come and sit in here and not do the exercises. You know, that's like somebody that comes into the rooms of recovery and don't work the steps. You know, I think I gave you some analogies of that. It's like it's like plowing your field and not planting nothing. It doesn't make sense. All right. It's like buying a new suit, putting it on, but you didn't take a shower. You may look good, but you still stink. So what's the sense of all of that? So the idea is to come in here and do the things that are suggested to you, and your life will get better as a result of that. So again, most of you didn't do the work. That's on you. Any other questions about that? Any other questions you want to talk about? Step one, going once, going twice. Okay, if you got a question, you need to talk about it, we can always back up and go over. All right, so let's get into step two. So step two says, it's on 59. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So there's some questions in there, like maybe, what is sanity? You know, what my sanity to me may be your insanity. I don't know. But here's a good definition of the word sanity that works well for us in this kind of a format, in this working with on alcohol and drugs and other problems. So sanity, and you might want to write this down. Sanity is the ability to see the truth about myself. Uh-oh. Sanity is the ability to see the truth about myself. So insanity is the inability to see the truth about myself. And that's why I keep repeating shit over and over again. All right, because I just can't see the truth. So I'm asking to be restored to sanity. Some people like to say in the rooms, you'll hear people say things like, well, I was never sane anyway, so how am I going to be restored to sanity? Each and every one of us were born perfect. Doesn't mean you didn't have a handicap or a disability or something, but each and every one of us were born perfect. Let me give you an example here. This is a nice, new, crispy $100 bill. Raise your hand if you would like this, if you want me to give this to you. Raise your hand if the ones that don't have their hands up, you wouldn't want this? Raise your hand if you would like this. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Now, follow me. I'm going to take it and I'm going to crinkle it up. Okay. Now raise your hand if you still want this. Okay, wait a minute. Let me take it and throw it on the floor and step on it, and rub it in the dirt and stuff, okay? Raise your hand if you still want this. You get this by now, where I'm going with this?
You're gonna have to burn it to get me to not raise my hand.
I could rip it and tape it back together and you'd still want it. And the reason that you still want it is because it never lost its value. It's still worth $100, regardless of what happened to it. It still has its value. And so do you. No matter what you've been through, kicked to the curb, stepped on, thrown down, beat up. No matter what horrific stuff happened in your life, you are still valuable. Just as valuable as the day God made you. We have to get the fog out of our head so we could start understanding just who and what we are and who created us and what our higher power is and that relationship and my value. So the step says came to believe, which insinuates that when I got here, I didn't know. And let me back up a minute. I want to tell you the difference between coming to believing is about hope. Okay? Believing is about hope. The second step is about hope. H-O-P-E. Hearing other people's experience gives us hope. The second step is about hope. It is not about faith. Faith comes in the next step and comes later. Now, we kind of mix that up. We kind of think that we step out on blind faith. No, it's impossible. You see, you can't have faith in something you don't believe in. You can't do it. And we want to tell ourselves we can. We want to tell ourselves we are, but it's not true. You can't have faith in something you don't believe in. You have to first come to believe. Once you come to believe, then you have some experiences, and that's what faith is. Faith is about experience. Believing is about hope. I always use the example, I'm driving my car in Dallas, and I got car trouble, so I call a friend of mine in Dallas, say, hey, you know, where can I take this car where I'm not going to get ripped off and the guy's going to do a good job? And he tells me, go to Jeff's place. And I go to Jeff's place. He fixes my car. He doesn't charge me a lot of money. Right? When I'm going to Jeff's place, I'm not going there on faith. I'm going there hoping, believing that my friend is not going to steer me wrong. Now, 3 months later, I'm back in Dallas driving around. I'm having car troubles again. Do I need to call my friend? No, because I have an experience. And now I can go to the same place on faith. So faith is going to come a little bit later. In this step, it talks about faith a couple of times, but it's talking about what we're looking for, not what we have. So what we have here is we have, hopefully, we have hope. Okay? We believe that you guys got something that can work for us. That's what we're doing. Okay, so we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And it says could restore us to sanity. Don't say would restore us to sanity. Why do you think it says that? Why doesn't it say came to believe that a power greater than ourselves would restore us to sanity? Huh?
Too much.
Too much at one time?
Because we have to take some action.
Ah, there you go. We got to take some action. It is too much at one time, but here's the thing. If I come in here and I start believing that he's gonna restore me to sanity, I ain't got to do anything. You've heard probably in your life many times that God helps those who help themselves, right? So we have work to do here in the second step. So the first two steps are so, I don't know what the right word is. They're so looked over. The first three steps are so looked over that people really don't get busy in the program to the fourth step. But I got news for you. It is impossible to do step 3 if you don't do a lot of work in step 2. You can't do it. How could you possibly turn your will and your life over to a higher power if you have no idea who and what that higher power is? So there's a part in the book in step 2. Let me find what page it's on. Page 53. Go to page 53 for a minute. Second paragraph, page 53. When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fiercely face the proposition that either God is everything or else he is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? So we're going to go back over that later when we get to that paragraph. We'll go back over that later. But here's the thing. It says, the last sentence says, what was our choice to be? And my question to you when you get to that sentence is, based on what? Based on what? God is, he's either everything or he's nothing. You're going to make a choice here. The book is asking you to make a choice. And what is that choice based on? So when I sponsor people and I work with people, we talk about who and what their God is. If I didn't talk about who and what their God is, who knows what they think their higher power may be? You hear it in the rooms all the time, right? The light bulb, the doorknob, the dog, the tree, all of that crazy stuff. That is crazy stuff. That is truly crazy stuff. I'll bust your light bulb. I'll kick your door in. I'll chop your damn tree down. What are you going to do then? So let's get that out of the way. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, has 2 conditions on a higher power. Did you know that? You can't use a tree or a light bulb because that's not following what the book says.
Or physical, right? It can't be making.
Yeah, they're not greater.
Well, on page 59, the second step says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So one qualification for a higher power is that it must be greater than ourselves. Right? That's what it's saying. Go to page 93 in your book. Page 93, the top of the page says, if the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. So there's your second qualification. So according to our literature, your higher power must be a power greater than ourselves, and it must make sense to you. Now, if I'm working with somebody and they're telling me that the doorknob makes sense to them, they need some serious help, probably way beyond Alcoholics Anonymous. I can sit down and talk to them about how that doesn't make sense to me, but if they insist it makes sense to them, I can't help them anymore because they probably need one of those padded rooms with the straitjacket and all that stuff. Now, we're not talking about, because a lot of people don't have a relationship, they're turned off with God. I didn't get sober to find God. I didn't come in the rooms to find God. So I'm one of them. But I knew enough. I'm also a recovering Roman Catholic. So I knew enough that there is a God, right? And it ain't no damn doorknob. And it ain't no light bulb. So the higher power has to be a power greater than ourselves. And it has to make sense to me. Those are the 2 qualifications.
Second qualification, where do you find that?
Page 93,
What?
top of the page, right? Somewhere right here.
Okay.
Make it emphatic that you don't have to believe in your conception of God, but it has to make sense to him. Okay. So again, when I'm working with somebody, we're going to talk about God. In fact, the big book says we're going to talk about God, quote unquote. So the book is telling us we're going to talk about God. How could we not? So if I don't get a relationship with God here in step 2, I can't do the 3rd step. It's impossible. What's the third step say? Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him, right? Understood him. Past tense, not a mistake. He could have just as easily said, understand. No mistakes in the big book. Understood him, past tense. That means that the understanding of God began before the third step. It began in the second step. The search for God. Go to page 45. First paragraph. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We had to find a power by which we could live, and there had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how will we define this power? Right there, that sentence. But where and how will we define this power? That's where the search for God begins, or whatever your higher power is. But where and how will we define this power? So the search begins right there. And then later it's gonna show us that this spirituality begins on page 47. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. This applies to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Okay, so this is the start of your spiritual growth. We're going to go back over those paragraphs anyway when we start reading the book. But it's important so we get some basic stuff out of the way, right? So we're looking to get a relationship with a power greater than ourselves. That has to make sense to me, okay? And then when I do that, then I can now eliminate all these things that are a bunch of bullshit that you hear people talk about in the rooms. Because in the third step, how can I possibly turn my will and my life over to the care of this thing we're calling God if I have no concept of what this thing I'm calling God is? Does anybody in here think there is no such thing as God? Does anybody not believe in a God? You don't have to have a relationship with him. You know? What do you believe in?
I don't really know, but I mean, God could be a bunch of different stuff. The way that I see it is they tell you that you have to go to church in order to believe in God and all the other stuff, but
We don't tell you that in AA.
I know that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying in AA.
Yeah.
That's how you think, but I mean, my definition is just somebody that I talk to, basically. It's not like I'm praying. I don't get that part. Having to pray to somebody in order for them to do something for you.
Well, how about talking to somebody?
I mean, I have a conversation out loud with, I guess, myself. You really want to be, but I just talk to whoever I feel is listening. But for me to have to pray to somebody in order for them to do something for me, in order for them to change my life or do this and do that, I just don't believe in that.
Yeah. Okay. Do you consider yourself intelligent?
Yeah.
Okay. This circle I just drew. This circle represents all the knowledge in the whole universe, everything. How to build a rocket ship, the galaxies, how to do open heart surgery, geography, chemistry, algebra, history, how to everything possible, all the knowledge in the world is this circle represents all the knowledge in the world. Now, before I ask you, I'm going to answer it myself. And I consider myself to be an intelligent guy. But all the knowledge in the world, I probably know about that much of. How about you?
The same.
The same? You sure? Okay. All right. You can say you're smarter than me. That's all right.
I may know things that I don't know. So
Oh, you may know things I don't know. All right. So, but you agree that's about where we're at, right? When you consider all the knowledge in the whole world, everything there is, all the knowledge in the world, that's about where we're at, me and you. What about the rest? Anybody really smart in here wants a bigger circle? Anybody? Okay, so if this, what is your name?
My name is Shay.
Shay? My granddaughter's name. All right, Shay. Follow me. If this is the amount of knowledge you know of all the knowledge in the world, can you tell me that it's not possible that all this knowledge that you don't know, that this God exists? Okay, that's all you need to be at right now to begin with. That's exactly where you need to be at. Okay? Because all of the knowledge in the world is right here, is what I know. All of this that I don't know, if I didn't believe in a God, I'd have to admit that God can exist in all of this that I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's all we need to begin at. We begin from where we begin at. That's what the book tells us. So, does that make sense? Okay. That's a good analogy, right? Yeah. Okay. So back then to what we're doing. We want to get in touch. So if I forgot why I even asked you if anybody. I'm glad this is my last time doing this. My mind is not what it used to be. I asked you if anybody doesn't believe in God for a reason, and I can't remember the reason no more. It's your fault, Shay.
It was came to believe.
Huh?
We came to believe
We came to believe.
because we didn't know.
Okay, I don't remember, so don't worry about it. Yeah, I gotta make my circle a little smaller, right? All right. But that's where we're at. That's what we're doing, right? So the book tells us that we begin from wherever we're at. From wherever we're at is understood. Is that what we talked about? Right, okay, thanks. I still don't remember, but that helps a little bit. Yeah, so the third step is talking about understood. So when you get to the third step, I have to have an understanding of God. Now, here's the thing that most people don't click together. I have to have an understanding of God that I'm comfortable with. This is very important. It's like, yeah, I believe there's God, but I don't have any personal relationship with God. That's not going to cut it. I need to get a personal relationship with my higher power. Okay, and this, what I just say? Man, I'm losing it today. Yeah, thank you. Boy, I don't know where my mind is. Probably in the gutter somewhere. So I have to be comfortable with my relationship with God, because, and again, I don't hear people talking about this when they're working with their sponsees or practicing this in their life. I don't hear them going over this stuff. So let's say I believe in God, right? But I don't really have a personal relationship with God. So if I don't have a personal relationship with God, I'm not really going to be comfortable with God. Not comfortable enough to turn my thoughts and my actions over. And that's what it's asking me to do in the third step. That's why I say, unless you do the work in step 2, you can't do the third step. Now, the problem is most people come in the rooms and they work with somebody and they're working through and they're on the third step. Now they're on their fourth step and they really have no personal relationship with God. They have no understanding of God. And if you don't talk to your sponsee about God, you might be working with somebody that thinks the light bulb is their higher power. And it's your job to talk to that person and see, you know, I know it makes sense to you, but let's see why it makes sense to you. Why do you think that that light bulb is more powerful than me or her or him or us? Explain that one to me. You see, so when you talk to somebody that you're working with, you'll get all the bullshit out the way, and you'll find out that they're just talking. They're just saying things without any basis of knowledge or anything like that. Okay. No, so no personal relationship. So we want to have a personal relationship with God. As you stay sober, that relationship grows. Your concept of God changes, and you get closer to God, and you know, because then you have faith. You have faith in God when you stick around. But when you're new and you're in here, you don't have. You know what? I've met lots and lots of priests, nuns, rabbis, monks, and all kinds of people in recovery. And I talked to them all. One time I did a convention in St. Louis with Father Leo. He was a funny dude. And I remember talking to him for a good hour outside, just sitting down, me and him talking. But I've talked to rabbis, I've talked to priests and nuns, because when I find out that's who they were when they got sober, or some of them still may be, I want to talk to them. And my first question to them is, what happened with your relationship with God? And you know what they all tell me? They didn't have one. Father Leo told me that, I don't know if he's still alive. You know, remember Father Leo, Susan? Yeah, he was a funny guy. He was talking about doing a prayer at a funeral in the cemetery. One time he was so drunk he fell in. Yeah, he fell in the hole. He was blessing the coffin and he fell in. That's got to be messed up, right? But he told me that he had no concept of God. 30 years of being a priest. He didn't find God till he got to AA. And I've heard that from nuns and rabbis and monks and priests. I haven't met one yet, all these years, that told me they had a good relationship with God before they came to AA. Most of them don't even have any concept of who God was. Yeah. They go to the seminary to get their, become a priest or whatever they do. And did you have?
No, just so I'm sorry.
That's
So
right.
Where we're getting to is if he is all or is he if he's nothing. And what I just had to do before my third step is that I had to accept everything bad that happened to me and good was all from the same person. And let go of this anger. Is that kind of where we're going?
Well, we're not going to do that in the second step, to let go of the anger you mean the anger towards God about what happened to you?
Mhm.
No, but we are going to talk about realizing that it wasn't God that did that to us, because you're probably like me, and most of us in the room probably can all had a moment like, where we screwed up and we're messed up, or, and what do? We say, why, God, why are you doing this to me? I hit that guy with a bat in the head. Why are you doing this to me, God? Well, God did him with a bat. Tony, you had your hand up before. I'm sorry, I forgot.
I was just gonna say, like what I believe in, I'm not so sure like being referred to as God.
It doesn't have to be a higher power.
God, like I don't necessarily know that it's God. I definitely believe in a higher power.
Yeah, and we don't define what your higher power should be. I say God because that's who I believe in. So I use the word God, but
does that all not just contradict either he is all or he is nothing?
yeah, whatever the higher power is, yeah, he either is or he isn't.
Is or he isn't?
Yeah. God is everything or God is nothing. But we'll get to that.
Then like he was referring to, he said he's in the bad as well as in the good. I don't think God did it to me, but I do think that the things that happened to me are my story today, which it says is our greatest asset.
Yeah. But you see, here's the thing, right? My understanding of that God is such a gentleman that he's never going to interfere in my life where I don't want him to. So I wouldn't say God is into bad. I would say Danny did bad, and God just went, there he goes again. So, when's that idiot gonna learn? All he's got to do is come to me, it'll be all right. But
good and bad is also a perception, right?
huh?
Good and bad is really a perception. I mean,
Well, yeah, and they're both necessary because there's a top to every bottom, a right to every left, a up to every down, you know. If there was no such thing as sad, how would you know you were happy, right? So, yeah, it's all relevant.
For me, Stephanie, and I struggle with this even today, is laying down all this prejudice. You know, for me, that's the final of God, is laying down what I think I know, how I know, where I know, because that shit works, you know?
Yeah.
I'm prejudiced towards even that thought of having a higher power that knows better for me than me, because I try to run the show.
How long are you sober now? A week? How long you been in and out of the rooms?
15 years.
Okay, I think God knows better than you. I think mostly everybody in the room knows better than you. So you have to little yourself, you have to knock yourself down, and you have to get rid of that ego and stop thinking that you know the answers. You obviously don't. And it's okay to not know the answers. But if you come in here and thinking you know the answers, you're screwed. So you have to get to the point where, yeah, that's what the prejudices are. They're thinking, I know what's right and wrong. If you're a week sober in 15 years, you don't know anything you need to know. And you shouldn't even be talking about stuck on step 2, because you, at 1 week, you're on step 1, right? So participate, do the work, keep coming back and get this, you know, the intellect is not your friend. Yeah. I told you that 17 years ago. I was right, wasn't I? Yeah. They told me that 30 years ago. The intellect is not your friend. Okay. I said the intellect is not your friend. I remember one time I was talking with my sponsor. I was 6 months sober or something like that. And he said, I gave him this profound answer that I thought was a profound answer to something. And he said, Danny, you're very intelligent. I said, thank you. He said, that wasn't a compliment. So, yeah. So what you got to do is downsize. You got to downsize that set aside prayer. You got to do that every day. Remember set aside prayer, set aside everything I think I know about the book, about recovery, about the steps, about God, about you people. Did everybody get that basket? Looks a little light. We're using their electricity, drinking their coffee. Throw something in there. Huh? No, you see, I know its value. That's why it's in my pocket. Nice try, though. Okay. Somebody just hitting in now?
Probably got knocked out.
What was that?
There's a couple people that have been knocked out.
Why?
I don't know. They just keep letting them back in. Some people have crappy internet connections.
All right. Okay, so anybody got any questions on what we talked about so far? We got a lot of work to do on step 2. We're gonna be doing step 2 for a few weeks. And then at the end of step 2, guess what? I have another exercise for you that'll help you do the second step. And I hope you participate more with the exercise in step 2 than you did with the exercise in step 1.
So when we do that first exercise again, are you gonna give us another?
We're not doing it again. You can do it yourself. You can always do
Well,
it
I did
yourself.
it the first time, but I didn't.
Yeah, but you didn't read it out. It's who wanted to read it out. You only asked the question. I didn't say you did it wrong. You said you did it wrong. And I said, why do you think you did it wrong? Yeah. Even if you did do it wrong, you did more than people who didn't do anything. So it's okay. All right. So what do we got going on now? We got 5 minutes. So anybody got any questions? Anybody?
I know the 12 by 12 is different from the big one. But in step 3, in the very bottom paragraph, it says in the first 2 steps, we were engaged in reflection. We saw that we were powerless over alcohol.
But we also perceive that a faith of some kind, if only in itself, is possible to anyone. These conclusions did not require action, they required only acceptance.
Yeah. So what's going to happen in the 12 and 12? You're going to find that as Bill wrote this 12 and 12, he asked people that were sober to comment on what they do with their sponsees. And we don't even look at the 12 and 12 in step 2, because step 2 and the 12 and 12 is all about sponsees writing about what they do with their. So we don't work the steps out of the 12 and 12. We're going to go to the 12 and 12 in step 4 and 6, 7, and 11, because there's some really good, useful information in there. The rest of it we take out of the big book. So that's probably some sponsor that similar to what they got in step 2, you know, saying that that's what they do, that there's no action, you know. And people that say there's no action in a step means they don't do any action in the step. And if they don't do any action in the step, then again, my question is, how did you fully concede to your innermost self?
Well, I wrote on my first and second step.
Yeah, I'm not talking about you.
I was wondering why they had that worded like that.
Because a lot of people put their input in the 12 and 12. Bill Wilson had people that were sober and was sponsoring people to and ask their opinions on, you know, what do you do with your sponsee? And they put a lot of that in 12 and 12. So I don't know who wrote that and where it comes from, but, you know, again, my question is, if somebody says that you don't do any, there's no action in step 1 and no action in step 2, why do we even have 1 and 2? Why don't we just start off with 3 or 4? There's actually no action in 3 either, really. So if somebody says you don't have to do any work on step 1 and step 2, then guess what? They didn't do any work on step 1 and step 2. Remember what it says in step 1 in the 12 and 12, right? Who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Well, if practically no one cares to admit complete defeat, then practically no one does admit complete defeat, right? And the same thing with all this other stuff. If you say there's no work doing it, then you didn't do any work. And if you didn't do any work, then tell me how, without doing any work, you've learned to fully concede to your innermost self. That didn't take you 10 years to do. And if you didn't do any work on step 2, and then tell me how you came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. So, yeah. So, but when it comes to working the steps, we use the big book.
So, you know, what I heard, that the only direction is to take action steps.
In the big book. Yeah.
That's the only
Yeah.
place. We're at the direction.
Yeah, it's in
12
it.
and 12 is a bunch of essays with additional information. Some very useful, but
12 and 12, basically, he wrote the 12 and 12 for 2 reasons. He wanted to push the traditions and he needed some money. And it was another book to sell. Not saying that it's not good and not useful, but that was the purpose of the writing the 12 and 12. So, all right. Any other last minute question? Yes.
Chip Fix is online.
At 7:30?
It's online.
Is there 2 O's open online? I have no idea, but I'm sure one of these women can help you.
Uh-huh.
All right, guys. Same time, same channel next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
See you next week.
Danny.
Thank
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Danny.
Danny.
oh, not a problem at all. I appreciate you letting me.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Okay.
Hasta la vista.
Bye.